to be very, very good. I am looking forward to this one personally. A lot of talk has been in the media about the involvement of women in high tech. And that is an issue that needs to be addressed. It's serious. And right now, we're going to get a chance to talk about blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and women with a panel of wonderful women that are here, that are coming in right now to sit down. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. One thing I want to mention right now, this is very important, Toni, Lee, Casserly, and Arry will be joining us also. They are currently doing a session in another building, and so when they come in, we're going to have them seated even as we progress. We don't want to take any of your time. We're going to get started right now, and we are due to end this session in, I'll have to check on the exact time on that and let you know, but I'll be the guy on the stage here letting you know it's time. But I am really looking forward to this. Good to have all of you here, and Stacy, I think you're the one that'll be taking care of this, is that right?
I will. I'll take care of it.
Okay, wonderful. Well, then I'll let you introduce the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, well, please welcome the panel on women on blockchain and cryptocurrencies.
In a way, it seems a little bit old-fashioned to identify us as all women, especially in a day and age when there's like many genders now. So, and it's still part of the legacy system. It seems like from the banking world that, you know, are you like male or female or whatever? There's no quotas really in Bitcoin, in the Bitcoin space. And in fact, you don't often know if you're talking to a male or female in most of these cryptocurrency troll boxes or exchanges or Slacks or anything like that. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. Just come on up on stage. And also, say when you first got involved in Bitcoin and how you heard about it.
Sure. Hi, my name is Tatiana Moroz. I'm a singer-songwriter. I also have Tatiana Coin, the first artist cryptocurrency, and a marketing and PR company for the crypto space that I founded in 2015. I got involved in Bitcoin in 2012 when I became disillusioned with the political process, especially surrounding Ron Paul's election.
Thank you, Stacy and Tatiana. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Poole. Been in the Bitcoin space about 3.5 years. Came from whole career in tech, domestically and internationally, and I heard about Bitcoin from a guy named Flip. I used to work for Flip, if you've seen him talk here, and invited me to a day of what's Bitcoin. Didn't know too much about it, but I thought this can change the world and give advantages to people that don't have it. And in my naivete, I thought that was just going to happen like that. So the good news is we're on that path for a lot more inclusiveness. Also, I'm just doing my own consulting and helping some startups right now.
My name is Elizabeth McCauley. I first learned about Bitcoin in 2013 when I was working on Capitol Hill for a member of Congress. I was doing some foreign affairs work, and I was fascinated with the potential of this technology to truly change the world beyond just, say, foreign aid. So to be able to empower specifically women, the marginalized, unbanked populations. I've been involved since then. I serve on the board of directors of the Bitcoin Foundation, and I consult for several companies in the space.
Hi, my name is Adella Toulon-Foerster, and I am the director of the fintech practice at Cogent Law Group in Washington, D.C., and I got involved in the space in 2001. Yeah, I know, right? I co-founded a company, and we built online gold-backed payment systems. So that was kind of like my first sort of foray into cryptography and financial cryptography, really. Then heard about Bitcoin in 2010. By some of my colleagues that I worked with. They were developers, and they were like, check this out. So took me a while to kind of wrap my head around it, but I had done a lot of work on the coding and bug testing side of things back then. So I subsequently wrote my legal thesis on it and was told that I was going to fail because it wasn't a thing. So that's really nice to kind of go back every now and then and reshare a post and go like, look, this is real, right? Remember? So I have co-founded translunar.io, and it's an incubator in the crypto space meant for crypto companies on the East Coast.
My name is, and my fucking mic is not working. I'm Eleesa Dadiani, founder of Dadiani Fine Art and Dadiani Syndicate, an outfit aimed at encouraging virtual trade routes between BRICS and the UK. So I came across the blockchain when I first followed Max Keiser into the toilets. But it didn't mean much to me then. So I think I properly got involved in it sort of a few months ago. Yeah, we'll have to share this because my fucking thing is not working.
So let's talk about the fact that one thing that's been interesting about Bitcoin is, first of all, my first conference I ever went to was, I think, the first Bitcoin conference in Prague in 2011. There had been that famous meetup in New York where they ordered some pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. But this is the first Bitcoin conference, and I think there might have been 1 or 2 women there. But usually when you go now, it's 50-50. In terms of the Bitcoin space, it's obviously a new space. There's no old boys club from industries that have been around for hundreds of years, so they all help each other, and that's natural. You help your friends. So I think in the legacy systems, like the legacy financial system or legal systems or corporate system, you have a lot of male dominance because they're all the friends and they've had the power for hundreds of years. But in terms of the Bitcoin space, it's interesting to hear we have somebody with some cryptographic experience here, because that's one thing I do worry about looking around, is that there are many women involved, but in terms of the mining and the core code developers, like that's all men. So what do you have to say about that? Let's start with the cryptographer here.
Well, first of all, I have to say cryptography is way above my pay grade, but it's something that I always try to be as engaged in as I possibly can. So I order books and I read up, and look, if you want to learn something, we live in the age of information. And I'm not afraid to ask people, especially our clients, like, I don't understand how this works. Like, draw it out. Let's whiteboard it out. Let's figure this out. And I really think it's extremely important, especially working in the legal and compliance field, that we as professionals understand exactly what the clients are doing. It's really easy to find a lawyer, but you want to have a personalized experience because some of these systems can be extremely nuanced. So I just keep trying, that's it.
That's a good point, because you may have heard of this thing called MaxCoin, and how that came about was actually through me, because at that time, Keiser Report had been talking about Bitcoin since early 2011, and then suddenly in about, I guess it was 2013 or 14, all these altcoins started emerging, and I was like, wait, what are all these things about? People were asking us what they were about, and we asked that on the show. And 2 young cryptography students at Bristol University reached out and said, we can show you live on the show how to create one. I was like, well, that's awesome. Let's create a coin. Let's call it MaxCoin. Who knows? So we went through the process on air of how to create a cryptocurrency, all the elements, the various algorithms, how many coins you want to pre-mine or whatever. So just doing it, I learned so much. You do then get a lot of trolls saying, I've lost money. So there's that element. But what have you learned diving in when you jumped into Bitcoin and just started doing stuff? And did it alter your path of what you were doing before?
If you told me 5 years ago that I would be at the edge of finance and technology, I would have laughed, because I've always considered myself a singer-songwriter and an artist. So I think, I'm sorry, I don't even know what the question is. I lost my train of thought.
What have you expanded your
knowledge? The knowledge that I learned is that technology takes a lot longer than your imagination. And it's been a real lesson in patience. And it gives me a lot of appreciation for the things that go into it. Technology, literally, you can tell me a tech thing and 2 sentences in, I'm gonna start falling asleep. But this has been a really good learning experience. It forces me to expand myself and expand my possibilities. But I also think that even though the tech is important for women, I think that where we kind of lend additional support, which is just as critical, is in the communication of what this is. I learned about Bitcoin from Toni Gillespie and Stephen Pear. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. But it wasn't until Jeffrey Tucker explained it to me in sort of a story form and let me visualize what that would look like that I really kind of got interested in it. And that's something that I've taken into my approach to educating people about it, is giving it a little bit more of that human element and that storytelling property.
Thanks, Stacy and Tatiana. Well, one thing I find interesting about the Bitcoin space, the blockchain space, is, you know, before Bitcoin and blockchain, I guess we were all doing something else, right? So for myself personally, I was doing sales, marketing, starting up sales business units, and that's what I do now. So for me, the transition was, I love this industry, I'm gonna learn about it. I learn about as much about the tech as I can, but I'm not a pure technologist. I guess I could be, because there's enough information, as Adella said, out there, but I'm kind of doing what I do. And the opportunity, not just for women, but for anyone coming into this space, is you can come in, you can start mining, you can learn about it. It's a very self-driving type of industry, for example, right? So I could be a miner, but that's not my thing. So I'm helping like a cryptography company. I'm an advisor to this company called Moody. It's a self-sovereign digital identity. It's got all this cryptography. I don't have to learn the cryptography, but I understand the business value. So I feel like I'm me, but I brought myself into the industry, and let's see what happens.
I mean, I agree, because obviously one of the most powerful people in the tech sector before he passed was Steve Jobs, and he wasn't a tech geek like Zuckerberg or Bill Gates. He hired the right people to create his vision. But let's introduce the new people on stage. Say, how are we going to get a mic to? That one doesn't work.
I talk really loud.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
La la
Sing it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Woo! Yes? Is that me or is it? Oh, it's working. Yay! Hello, wonderful. Thank you. Woo! Hi, everyone. I am Toni Lane Casserly. I am a leader in the virtual nation movement. My company is called Culture, and we essentially I work with some of the most powerful, prominent indigenous leaders in the world who are actually sovereign, to create new forms of governance, self-sovereign identity, and fundamentally to take the idea of the nation state and evolve that toward culture, which means that our life becomes based on play, and the idea of our economy becomes entwined with our own morality for prosperity, which I think is deeply important. I also co-founded Cointelegraph, and I feel really blessed to be here and super happy to be surrounded by so many amazing ladies and dudes too. Woo.
Arry?
The mic?
This one? Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
the one in your hand.
The one in my hand. Hi, my name is Arry Yu. I'm the COO for StormX. We are the makers of Storm Market, a gamified micro-task marketplace where users anywhere can earn anytime and from any device. We're a pretty cool company in that we've been around for 3 years. We have 250,000 monthly active users across 187 countries, and we reward them in Bitcoin and Ether today. For trying out cool products like Hulu, Dollar Shave Club, Uber, you name it. We have quite a few bunch of clients, and we're also one of the companies that are tokenizing right now, so that's one of the perspectives I'm able to offer. My background is I have about 15 years of experience in software development, and everything from big, large enterprise data warehouses to custom mobile application development projects, etc. I love tech. But the platform that I will often speak upon is technology is a tool. Blockchain is awesome, but it's also a technology and a tool. Everything that we do should enhance the user experience and humans. And if decentralization is more about access to the people. So if we're really going to create a global platform, whatever it is for, and make it truly democratized, we really have to make the experience extremely simple so that anybody from anywhere, from any walk of life, can access it.
Before you came into the room, we were asking about the fact, well, we noted the fact that, as Bitcoin and blockchain is new, there are no old boy networks that have been around for hundreds of years. But a lot of power in the Bitcoin community is around the developers and the miners. And in that area, you don't see very many women. Do you think that's a problem or an issue? I know you're in Silicon Valley and the tech investment, so is that an issue if so much power lies with those entities and people?
I'd say it's a challenge that can be overcome. With awareness comes, the ability to solve problems, right? And I think regardless of whether you're in tech, medicine has this problem, academia in a lot of areas has this problem, engineering, I think we just have to be able to create new ways of work. The way women work today, it's still sort of a new movement. Feminism just recently happened. We're now in the workforce. We're VPs and CEOs and investors and in all walks of life. There just has to be more normalization around what's expected between relationships between men and women, all different kinds. And so I think a lot of what we're experiencing today with all the conversations around lean in, bringing to light that not enough women are involved, all the STEM programs that are encouraging women to come up, this is just a signal that we're now evolving to the next stage of really normalizing what it means to be a woman in the workplace. And we're still trying to figure that out, right? Like maternity leave programs aren't quite figured out yet. We need more women to step up into leadership positions so we can figure it out together. It's kind of my point of view.
Yeah, there's not that many workplaces in the Bitcoin space. It's everybody's.
Especially, yeah.
I was going to say, I think that the idea of that kind of centralized ownership, like the idea that I have to have all of the mining or I have to consolidate all of these resources, I actually think that principle in and of itself is antithetically parallel to the idea of feminine consciousness, which is why I think you see two of the largest ICOs that have happened, Tezos and Bancor, are companies run by women. And I think what you're actually going to see is rather than women attempting to have extractive strategies in terms of the way we think about leadership, it's going to be more about generation and more about creation. And I think that's where you're really going to see that power flourish. And to bridge off your point, absolutely, it is so important that we expose and overcome these collective traumas, especially the traumas of, whether it's if you have a masculine personality, men preventing women from feeling threatened by other women, or if you have a feminine personality, women feeling threatened by other women or saying negative things about them or causing them harm. I think it's so important for all of us to realize that at the end of the day, listen, no one's really that important. We're all one human race. It really doesn't matter. And we need to, more than anything, not just lean on other women. And it's not about leaning on men to uplift women. It's about leaning on the fact that we all come into this earth and we leave this earth the same. And we have such a short time to be here. So just be good to others. Be good to yourself.
Did you want to say something?
I think it's time to start, to your point, to start neutralizing the way that we see these inequalities, because I never, ever walk into a room feeling like I'm not equal. And there's so much of a historical context to this as well, because, just imagine me walking into a room in 1950 in this country. So if I allow other people to say how I'm supposed to feel or act or be or perform, well, that's not a meritocracy. And frankly, that's not what I believe in. And so I want to start with myself and just kind of radiate that I can do this, I can mine, I can understand cryptography like fuck you, right? So I think it's important to neutralize, to start that conversation like, okay, equal playing field.
Yeah.
And sorry, can I jump in?
Sure.
And to riff off that, technology is actually one of those special spaces I don't think many women have quite, some people have embraced it, some women are starting to discover it. It's especially when it comes to startups and entrepreneurship, where it really is a meritocracy, because as a startup, you don't really have time to think about, oh, did that person look at me wrong, or I don't feel very welcome, or
Right.
I'm so worried that that person sexually harassed me. You kind of have to go, shh, that was awful, and you got to move on very quickly, and that's where your results will show your value, and it's a make it or break it.
I was 18 years old when I co-founded my tech company, and I had a very high power sort of investor. And, you know, he shamed me. He shamed me in front of a room of men, you know. And I was 18 years old, a little bit fragile, but, you know, I'm pretty Caribbean. So, so he says this thing to me, and, you know, it passes. And, you know, at the end of the evening, he was sitting at the back smoking his weed with his friends and being super cool. And I went up to him and I was like, dude, that shit was not cool. I just went full Caribbean on him. And that's it. Sometimes you just have to go full Caribbean.
Are you going to go full Caribbean now, too?
So I definitely think this technology gives us women power to empower other women globally. I happen to serve on the board of directors of Code to Inspire, the first girls' computer coding school in Afghanistan. And what we're seeing in a country like Afghanistan, the general trajectory for a girl is first getting very lucky if they can to go to school, but after that, carpet making for a career. And so what we're doing as the first girls' computer coding school is enabling these girls to get involved in technology firsthand, learn how to code, be able to even work remotely for companies. And soon we're adding crypto into the process, but it is really amazing how, you know, we can go beyond just saying we want to help women, we want to raise money for women, but we can empower women with this technology so they can have their own companies in a country even like Afghanistan, where just a few years ago, women were outlawed from going to school. They could not even go to school. So there's so much potential where we can take it beyond just saying, oh, it's great, this can help women, but actually they're able to do something with it and have a livelihood from it.
But speaking of all around the world, I mean, in all of Africa, in India, and many third world countries, you'll see that women actually have more of the financial power and way more advanced than our economies in terms of the fact that they've had, you know, transacting currency via value via their phones for a long time. Like, Bitcoin came after all that. They were already advanced beyond what we are here, because luckily they don't have a legacy banking system, so they're able to just leapfrog us. What has everybody here seen about that, or does anybody have anything to add on that?
Just a side comment in that I also think that women in these areas are more financially empowered because societies are oriented around the idea of tribalism instead of around the idea of a more radical individualism. And I think in that radical individualism, we have in a certain sense propagated a like manifest destiny kind of attitude toward things. And I think that that very aggressive, dominant attitude of ownership is a more masculine attitude, where in many of these other countries, their life is centered around the concept of family. And I think that's like, if you even look to China, a more developed country, you have many women there who are extremely powerful. It's a huge contrast from a place like Japan. And I think it really depends on the attitude we take toward our cultures that shape the attitude and the relationships we have with our relative economies.
There's still the reality, though, in some countries, like, for example, Afghanistan or countries in the Middle East, where women cannot even open a bank account on their own. So Bitcoin is truly a game changer. So, for example, with our students at Code to Inspire, our goal someday is to get them freelance work, get them paid in Bitcoin. With that, there aren't too many rails yet there in a country like Afghanistan, but they can even buy Skype gift cards, top-up cards, Amazon gift cards, anything that they want to, say, even read online or get connected, outside of having to go with their brother or father to a bank account, get lucky to even get their own bank account. So there's a lot of potential there, specifically with Bitcoin, due to the traits of that mobile payment setup.
That's very interesting.
Actually, we've been doing that for 3 years across 187 countries. And so 3 years ago, we started off by rewarding people 0.2 of a penny. And what we learned over the past 3 years, other than getting really good at microtransactions, is that to us in the United States, we're very, very, very blessed, and we just don't really know what it means to be hungry. What we discovered was 0.2 of a penny is meaningful to people in other countries, and we saw user growth like crazy. And so we said, okay, well, what if we could up that to 2 cents and more user growth? And now we're getting to like $2. And so we have, right now we have a humble 250,000 monthly active users, and we've seen how meaningful these microtransactions to us, which we take for granted, are meaningful to other people. And we actually are expanding our business by creating those freelancer jobs. But we actually see a bigger opportunity. And this is sort of riffing off what you said before. The idea is we're going to start off with QA testing and machine learning. Very simple tasks in general. So, we've been mobile app developers quite some time. There are lots and lots of different devices out there, all with different kinds of operating systems and all the different variations that exist across the world. If you're a publisher or an application developer, it's really hard to test all these different varieties and to catch all the bugs. But what if you could pay 10,000 people across the world, I don't know, 50 cents, $1, to every time you did a release of an application, you say, hey, can you just make sure my sign-in process still works? Can you make sure that you can still log into your account? Can you make sure you can create a quick 10-step process and you can get the testing done, and people all over the world can get paid. And who's going to be paying these people? Publishers. Like we've seen this with Hulu's and big companies. They have budgets to do that. So this is how we start spreading the wealth. Well, now if you can imagine grandma in Timbuktu has learned how to do simple tasks like I can test, or I can identify oranges in a bunch of photos, and I'm earning 50 cents a day. That's meaningful. Yeah. And then I can say, hey, grandpa, you can do oranges too. We can be earning 50 cents each. That's $1 for the family. And then we could be like, hey, auntie, you should do this too. And now we got a team of 4. All of us, we're earning $4 for the family a day. That's meaningful. And so once we start getting practice at this, we go, hey, actually, we could start creating these tasks and outsourcing it. So now you can get a whole village doing tasks and earning and increasing their skills, technical skills, without even knowing it. And that's our vision.
I've also, in a similar vein, have you ever visited steamit.com?
Yes.
Yeah, you see people from all over the world, and they're super happy to earn $1.50 that day. And I can't believe my story went viral. And you're like, it's $1.50, but for them that's like it's gone viral.
And we really believe the opportunity is we can take that earning and actually start to teach them and train them, because there's the morality question. If you have, we believe you should give to those that do not have and bring them up too. And this is how we really democratize access on a global scale. Not everyone has access to just even an elementary education. We can teach them. There's some basic steps, right? Just have to program it up into a blockchain.
Well, with the legacy banking system that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are replacing, we see an absolute standstill now. There's no velocity of money because it's all in the hands of 5 people who can't spend it. This is just impossible. There's not enough hours in the day. But at least now we have a more distributed system with all these, not just Bitcoin. And I know there is a lot of concentration in Bitcoin because of the early adopters have a huge amount when you could still mine it on a laptop. But all these other cryptocurrencies, anybody can create one. Right here, you can go to YouTube, look it up how to do it, and just create a currency and learn. And who knows, it might be the next Bitcoin. There was silence.
Another thing, something kind of interesting about this panel is people were discussing, wait, why is there a women's panel? So you'll see in this, and I'm glad there is. I'm glad we're up here. I'm always glad to be invited to share views and learn views of other people. So thank you for having the panel. And it's a good opportunity also because in the Bitcoin space, there's a very large range of views. There are people that believe, yes, there are many more men in this industry, and we want to pull in all types of people, women, other types of diversity, and so a lot of people support that. And then with the kind of decentralized nature of everyone is self-sovereign and makes their own way in this industry, there's beliefs on the other end that there should never be a men's, women's, child's panel. For myself, I believe everyone can have their view on that. The way that I try to represent myself is first myself. I am a woman. I'm an older woman in the space. I'm an American, so I just kind of bring what I have with me, and I do support getting other people in. I want to note the Chamber of Digital Commerce. I used to work for them, and they did a fantastic job of doing a summit in DC, and they worked with a group out of MIT and gave scholarships to a bunch of younger people who normally wouldn't probably go buy a ticket to that type of event, and brought in many young people on scholarship. And I talked to some of them. They were thrilled to be there. So there's a lot of interest around this topic. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Of course, I support inclusiveness of more people to come in. You know, people who might not have had a good advantage, for them to come in, and you know, Elizabeth and others are talking about ways to do that, but I just kind of wanted to throw that on the table for any other discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the tech thing, I was just going through my mind of all the women I've met over the past year or two in the Bitcoin space, and a lot of them have they entered it via selling things for Bitcoin and started, the thing about Bitcoin is as soon as you use it, it's more than just a currency. You start to learn immediately of a new way of thinking and being.
That it's a total cult.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Shh. Oh, and by the way, I don't agree with Susan. You're not an older woman. Seriously.
Yeah.
No.
So, but if you look at the tech sector, there were the guys and the women who wrote all the code to develop the first programs and stuff like that. But the most powerful people are people like Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos. And as far as I know, that neither of them is like a code writer or engineer, knows how to write a line of code, but they dominate the tech sector at the moment. So it doesn't necessarily, they're treading in terms of the Bitcoin space, what the women in the Bitcoin space, from my observation, have been providing, whether it's the Amazon of the Bitcoin space or not. I just did read before I came in here that Amazon's going to be accepting Bitcoin soon. So. Nice. So, I mean, does anybody else have anything uniquely female to add to this? It feels kind of silly, like goofy to me in a way, like to have a women's panel. It seems like something from like going to a banking conference, and it's like, you know, it feels weird in that way.
So I think these days the meaning of what a feminist is can be sort of offensive in certain ways, and then there are certain ways where it resonates, right? And that sort of varies. And it makes it a little bit difficult to comment on experiences that we all have in this space. And not to be the Debbie Downer, but I do think that sometimes there are environments that are uncomfortable for women, and I'm not sure if the guys are aware of that. There still continue to be conferences where they have like naked dancing people, and I just think it's really inappropriate. So, you know, not to be the police of people's interactions, but there does need to be some pressure put in the community that sort of thing isn't acceptable, that, you know, it's like some of these guys, it's like you let them out in Vegas and they're in strip clubs and it's kind of just a vibe. They're not literally, sometimes they're literally that, and that's okay, but it does put women at a disadvantage. I also feel that I've heard a lot of stories from women in this space feeling that they're showing up for a job interview and next thing they know that the guy thinks it's a date. And it isn't something that men are cognizant of, and it absolutely goes on. It does provide sort of an uncomfortable environment. I advise on a lot of different conferences and stuff for speakers, and it always shocks me that they just have all dudes. And not that you want to have token people, because that's stupid, but it does shock me that they are very not cognizant of it. Like, we don't have to have token people, but be aware that I've seen panels, for example, where there's all men on the panels, and then the women are trying to say something, and then the guys are just like, oh, and they completely ignore the woman's, like, what she's saying. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that that does sort of go on. There are a lot of opportunities in this space. I think that things are changing. I think that, it's great to have, Bitcoin is for everybody, but it would be nice to see a little bit of a shift in the culture.
I will say, I think it was the third or fourth Bitcoin conference, and it was in London, and we walked in, and there was a woman, dancing in glitter and bikini. But to be fair, Max Keiser, my husband, did start his career as a go-go dancer at Trudy Heller's, a lesbian bar in New York City, and he has been begging all these Bitcoin conferences to let him do it here.
Nice.
I think it would bring in more women.
I think there's an opening. We'll give 5 minutes out of our talk if that happens.
Unfortunately, he's in LA right now. But,
Just kidding.
I think that's how Eleesa met him when in the bathroom she mentioned and in Groucho Club. But there is that. I've seen a few go-go dancer sort of women at some of the. I haven't seen them recently. Maybe they've become Bitcoin millionaires. They were probably paid in Bitcoin, and now they're happy.
Just going to jump in before Toni. I will say the one that I went to had equal billing, men and women, body painted in glitter. I was like, okay, whatever.
I know which conference that is. The first few, they didn't have men. They only responded with having naked men after the women pressured them. So let's just be clear on that.
I have never seen a naked man at a Bitcoin conference.
I'm not sure you want to. I have seen a naked man at a Bitcoin conference. He wasn't paid to be naked. But I
Really
think
quick, can I jump in here? I have two really important points to make to bridge off of this. And since we're starting to dive into this, I'll go ahead and share something I actually just wrote about, and I don't talk about this frequently, but I feel compelled to share, just subjective experience. There was a point in time where I was not in a place where I had any kind of financial security. I was trying to be an entrepreneur. I'm self-made. I've never, everything I have earned through my own hard work. And I remember going on job interviews and being told that I was too attractive to have a job. I remember business partners refusing to pay me because they said I was attractive enough to marry well. I have been roofied 4 times by investors, just in the not like investors in the blockchain space, but investors in general when I've tried to pitch my business, and I'm very self-aware, and I've locked myself in storage closets and slept in janitor's buckets, and one time a taxi driver drove me home, and for years I made excuses and said that I wasn't being discriminated against. I was like, for you to say that this is discrimination is weak, because there are women who wake up on the other side of the world and it's nearly perfectly legal for someone to throw acid in their face. You're not struggling with a women's rights issue. You need to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and just keep gunning for it, and don't let these people hold you down. And so I continued to march down that path. And I wouldn't be held down, but I remember giving a speech in Scandinavia, and for the first time genuinely realizing after I stepped off the stage, the conversations that people were having me, I legitimately realized that I was not being treated as an equal. And after some of these experiences happened, I just having some eye-opening experiences that have really, really changed my perception. This is an area that I am particularly vocal about and extremely passionate about, but we have to take a step back because this is a mutual trauma. This is a mutual repression. Why do I experience what I experience? This is not just the traumas of women. This is also the traumas of men, growing up in a society where they are emotionally and sexually repressed. Not to the extent that women are, but there is still so much shame that comes around guys being emotionally vulnerable or telling people how they feel. And they feel like they can't have hard emotional conversations, which I think is why a lot of these dudes do things like go to strip clubs. It's because they say, I need to just connect with something. Like, I'm so lonely and I work all of the time, and maybe the only time I'm gonna interact with a woman, that's what I realized. I was like, wow, I'm the only woman you've really interacted with in like years. And that's why I'm getting this feedback, because I'm not looking at you as an asset. I'm not looking at you as something to be exploited, because I'm looking at you and I'm seeing a human being, a real human being with thoughts and feelings. And I used to get feedback from people that I had a problem, because people were like, you need to build business relationships. And I said, why would I do business with someone that I didn't care about as a person? Why would I enter into a relationship where there wasn't mutual trust and mutual vulnerability, mutual consideration? And so I think when we talk about these challenges, we really have to realize that just talking about women's issues and like chanting that megaphone, it's a mutual trauma and it's a mutual responsibility, and we're not going to heal this pain unless we address not only the issues of women, but also the issues of men.
Can I just make a point to that? First of all, when I was asked to participate in this panel, I was a little bit confused, because I have never segregated myself, and I never saw myself as a sort of a woman in the blockchain. I think it's important how we position ourselves. You know, when we talk about these advancements, when we talk about how men react to us, how we're turned down job opportunities, it's often because of the way that we, some of us, that we approach these things. You know, we want to accentuate our, attractiveness, our sexuality. I don't have that problem. I don't have a problem with men telling me I'm too attractive to be involved in something, because I know how to position myself so that I don't come against that. I don't, it's something else. When you're acutely aware of yourself and you want to accentuate those very parts of you, and then you go into a male environment, there will be a particular response. But when you're going in there knowing exactly what you are, exactly what you're gonna do, it don't matter. It don't matter. It's all bullshit. It ain't about how you fucking look. It ain't about because you're a woman. You're just going in there and you have to be less aware of yourself on that segment. So for me, I don't have those problems,
So I think as women, we just want to be able to do things on our own merit, and it's been really great. For me, I got involved in 2013. I remember my first Bitcoin conference, and I was running Bitcoin Magazine at the time, and I was like, wow, I can count on my hands how many women are here. But now there are so many women in the space, so many female CEOs. It's absolutely extraordinary. And so I think, to Tatiana's point, to talk about conferences, it's more so just for people to look and say, oh, there are female CEOs in the space, not to have a certain quota, because then that would take away from the merit of what we're doing. So we just want to be looked at the same way, and if we're more successful than a man in a space, that's great. If we're not, that's fine too. So to be looked at the same way.
I think, I just want to throw in there, if anybody would like to collaborate and create a different kind of women's feminist voice in the marketplace, because what really bothers me today is we have one view that's very angry feminist, and that's not my perspective. I actually echo very closely to what Toni and others have shared, and that I'd say I'm a, what is it? What am I?
A mystery.
Thank you. Yeah, I see myself as Asian, as woman, as cute, whatever you want to call me, as second, and I see me, Arry, as first. So Arry's first, and I happen to be these other things. And then the second point on that is we just have to be good humans. Humans first. It's not like us versus them, women versus men, old versus short versus tall. We're all human, echoing that. And like last night in Telegram, you were doing the token sale and you're sharing stuff, and this guy kept on going like, Arry, you're beautiful. Awkward smile. Thanks. You're really beautiful. Cool. Thanks. He did it again. I was like, that was it. I think the best you can do is be human. Like, slight blush, thank you. Let's move on, right? But I would say the wrong approach is, how dare you call me beautiful? Like, how dare you? That doesn't really help us, because the guy's putting a little bit of vulnerability out there, saying like, hey, you're beautiful, in a very Telegram awkward situation, yes, but you just gotta appreciate the human nature of where we are, whether we're in a digital space or a physical space. I could go up to Toni, which, I could be like, Toni, you're beautiful. She's beautiful. Yeah, like.
When you talk about angry feminists, did you
Oh, no, not at all.
That's not, I'm
No,
not,
no.
I'm not in any way feminine. I was just simply saying that, it's just sometimes, I just didn't notice it because I'm already maybe in a different part of the world where, basic needs are met. So I'm not looking at survival. I'm not looking at, when we're talking about Afghanistan and women not having access to just the most basic things like a bank account or money. So for me, perhaps already being in a place where all those needs are met, I just don't notice the difference. I don't notice myself as anything separate.
Well, maybe just saying like in versus feminist or not feminist, it's just humanist, like.
I have nothing to do with feminism.
Right.
Well, collectivism, right?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry that you had those experiences, Toni. that's, that's awful.
Keep going, yes, but,
But,
those are non-human behaviors, right? That's
right,
not cool.
and so you can get that in any sort of group, but I've been going to Bitcoin conferences for years from jump, and one of the things that I found about my Bitcoin family is that when I've had the wines, they make sure that I get home okay. Or, if I'm in a situation where I need to get home safely or I need a ride, my boys come through for me all the time, and I am saying boys because it is a male-dominated space, we know that. But I think it's just the individual, and you can find those kind of animals in any kind of industry, yeah.
But I do think, most of us here, we didn't live through the 60s. American society has advanced hugely since then. There was a lot of turmoil around women's rights, African American rights, civil rights, all of these things that we now take for granted. And I think there's still some residue of that. And when you mention angry feminists and stuff like that, that's, some people feel like, what are you arguing about? You have equality now and whatever. But I still.
We're in transition. What?
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, I remember when my mother was a young scientist in her early 20s at Keiser, and I saw like how a female scientist was treated openly. They would tell her, even though she was literally like a Mensa genius scientist, beautiful too, but they would like call her a bimbo and things like this. I mean, it was a different time back then. We've come very far, and it did take feminists to get us to this place. I think they went through a lot.
Does anybody here like Ayn Rand?
Who, what?
Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
Ayn? Yeah? Right? So I think to speak to that, can you imagine what she had to kind of deal with? Mm-hmm. But look at how powerful her work is, regardless. And it's not even from a woman's perspective, it's just from a strong, badass perspective.
Yeah, well, she wrote well. Emily Dickinson wrote well. George Sand wrote well. A lot of female writers wrote very well. And if you're an artist, you're a great artist.
But she distinctly had a huge male following.
Yeah.
She had a huge male following.
I've never ever experienced any sexism personally in my life, but I have seen other people who have. Usually it's very attractive women who do suffer a little bit more. But I don't discredit those who have had experience like that just because I haven't personally. But I do think there has been. I think it's less so. Certainly in the blockchain space, I haven't witnessed any sort of
Do you think it's to do with also strength of character? Because whether women or not, you find that a lot. Men get bullied too if they, of a weak, of a weak structure. So it's to do with, again, going back to my earlier point about how you position yourself, what construct you're made of. And I think if somebody is weak, it's a natural human tendency to eat that person up.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but it happens.
Sure, I think so.
I just want to say, obviously, I think most people respect everyone's views. We haven't had the same personal experiences. There's all kinds of enablement for people. There's all kinds of a discrimination. So I want to acknowledge that there are challenges for people of all different races, colors, and there will be. And as you said, many trends have been made. I guess if I look back, I came into an all-male industry, so I came into the programming industry, and then I came into software. I was often the only woman in the conversation, in meetings, many times for years. And I just kind of tried my best to show up. Yes, some things happened were inappropriate, and each time I had to make a decision, of what am I gonna do? And the decision I made was show up. And for women, a couple of things happened with younger women when I was managing women. And then that's when, it's funny, for myself, I tried to show up, be strong, but to see some things happen to other women, that's probably when I came out like fighting. And I really respect some of the women in the space that are very strong advocates and have very loud voices, and that's what they do. And for me, what I do is I show up, I participate, I try to be inclusive with all women and men, because as you said, this is an industry where people come in. They might not know anybody. They might not know other people.
It wasn't that long ago that, my mother just passed away at 66 just last year, and she wasn't able to have her own credit card. Like, she had to have a husband or father co-sign. It was that recent that in terms of accumulating power, and like I'm saying, like the old boy networks, it's not like you can blame them that they have all this power. It's just like they help their friends and they've had power for a long time. But it's just that we are starting, it was quite recent that we all grew up much more equal and had like more equality, and we could do whatever we wanted. But I know it's just as recently as a 66-year-old woman that had like a different sort of experience.
Yeah, and just to bring it back to Bitcoin, Bitcoin has destroyed the old boy network. Any woman around the world can get a Bitcoin wallet. And I just want to highlight, she's not on the panel today, but I don't know how many of you have heard of Alakanani Atirling. She is spearheading getting Bitcoin into the country of Botswana, and she's been involved in this for years. And she's not here on this panel, but there are women like Alakanani who don't really care if she's a woman, yes, but she's caring about a technology and a passion, how it can change a country, change the trajectory of the youth in Botswana. So, to bring up women like her, and there are plenty of others, we can each share examples of women like that we've met, but this technology has made it possible for someone like her to be able to take things to the next level, even though she's a woman in Botswana, hardly has any funding. Her story is one definitely worth looking into.
One of our platforms that my husband and I ran, we sent our community financed some nodes for her, so we sent them down there. Yeah, like 2 years ago. Yeah,
that's great.
Oh, we have 2 minutes. Any final words? I know you had something to say.
Well, I just wanted to say that sometimes the men are not the only ones that are making a situation difficult for women in the space. And while I appreciate everybody's right to their sexuality, there is a point where that becomes detrimental to other women in the space. And I think that it would be great if that sort of behavior was sort of, curtailed. That'd be great.
I'd just like to say that I am from Dominica, the little island that just got completely destroyed by Hurricane Maria. And Jason and I, Jason sitting in the red coat at the back, are pooling our efforts to get together shipments of medicine and water and food to send down there. So just check us out after if you want to find out how you can help us.
Thank you, everybody. And we're ready for some male go-go dancers. Anybody want to volunteer? No? Yeah? Oh, there's one guy. All right. Yes. All right. You got it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
All right.
I did. He's going to come and dance, but I did just want to say one last thing before that show starts, which is I think the most important thing we can do. You don't know someone's life. You don't know what someone is going through, and making a judgment on someone, interpreting an action and making a judgment from that is an assumption. And when you make an assumption, you fundamentally lose your capacity for human connection. You dehumanize that person by stating that their one action in one situation where they may be reacting to a trauma or to a pain, but to objectify that person and to treat them without empathy or make assumptions about their character for that reason is just an unacceptable human behavior. And if there is something that you see is a problem in any capacity, have courage. And have the courage to speak to someone directly, because they might not even know what they are doing legitimately.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. By the way, we want to stay in touch with you. As a male, I have to say, wow, this was fabulous. I just wish that my partner, Tatiana, you know, Gina, I wish she were here right now to hear all this. So I know others are going to want to get in touch with you. Let us know how we can reach you. And thank you so much for doing this. Thank you.
Don't send any weird telegrams to Arry.
That's right, no weirdness.
No,
Thank you. And our
she's
next
beautiful.
session will begin in just a few moments. With the help of Adella, actually some of you heard this the other night at the bar where Tatiana was playing. Groundbreaking, we actually formed a blockchain-based religion. We got our determination letter from the IRS on August 11th. It's the Church of Blurk.
Kind of religion.
Believe in random kindness. Right? So, up here on the top, there is a QR code. That QR code goes directly to our Bitcoin wallet where we're raising funds for Dominica relief. Please come get one. $10. You've got it in your phone. You know you do. Come scan it. Excellent. It'll be right here. Now, heard a request. Jason, we do need to set up the next program in just like 1 minute. Okay, 30 seconds.
You only have 1 minute to do it, 30 seconds.